Michigan DUI lawyer coming to you this afternoon with really breaking news in the world of field sobriety test research. Now, I have told you for ages that field sobriety tests such as the walk and turn and one leg stand are not relevant and are not reliable, and I've extracted data from the NHTSA studies to prove that. Even though officers are trained that these tests are wildly accurate, they have these huge false positive arrest rates. That said, last week, the Journal of the American Medical Association published one of the largest double-blind, placebo-controlled studies, and it absolutely destroys field sobriety tests. The study that I'm referring to was published on August 2nd, 2023 by the Journal of the American Medical Association, and this is peer-reviewed. The study was done by Tom Marcotte and Marilyn Hustis, amongst several other researchers. These are notable researchers with unimpeachable scholarly track records. The study, Evaluation of Field Sobriety Tests for Identifying Drivers Under the Influence of Cannabis, began in February 2017 and lasted until June of 2019, with 184 participants. It was a double-blind, placebo-controlled study designed to determine whether police roadside tests, such as the walk and turn and one leg stand, could be used reliably to determine whether a person was under the influence of marijuana. Only the highest trained officers in the nation were used for this study, drug recognition experts. These police officers received the most advanced forms of field sobriety testing. Now, last November 2022, the Michigan Court of Appeals ruled in People v. Bowden that field sobriety tests could not be introduced in drug driving cases. They held, after an amicus brief was filed by an organization that I'm on the board of, that these tests were not accurate and they were not reliable enough to use as evidence. And this has been talked about by DREs across the country. It turns out the Michigan Court of Appeals got it absolutely right. The researchers of this paper determined that field sobriety tests could not be used to accurately discriminate people who were too high or under the influence of marijuana as a roadside test. But that's not where the analysis ends, because these researchers, unlike those at NHTSA, made full disclosure of the underlying data for their study. And this data is absolutely damning. Researchers concluded that 83.3% of completely sober subjects failed the walk and turn with 2 or more clues. By comparison, 85.4% of people who were under the influence of THC failed the walk and turn. On the one leg stand, 58.6% of motorists that were completely sober failed the one leg stand with 2 or more clues, whereas 64% of the motorists who were under the influence of THC failed the test. And a whopping 50% of people who were completely sober failed both the walk and turn and the one leg stand. And as you can see down at the bottom of this graph that I was just going through, I've got several things that are highlighted in red. These are the tests that were conducted by officers, such as the modified Romberg and the lack of convergence test and the finger-to-nose test, where sober motorists oftentimes did worse than those people who were under the influence of THC. And a lack of convergence, 77% of completely sober motorists exhibited lack of convergence. That means that that test is so wildly inaccurate that it can't tell a drunk person from a sober person. It absolutely lacks any scientific reliability whatsoever. And so while officers might come into court and be tempted to testify to the validation studies that they were trained in their standardized field sobriety training course about the accuracy of certain types of tests, that doesn't tell the whole truth. The whole truth is in this double-blind study.